Thank you to all of you for your excellent testimony. I think Senator Thune has to run across the street. I'm trying to filibuster here with the folks that are here until he comes back. But thank you for the witnesses. I think you guys have done a really good job of delineating the different views of this. So let's get into this conversation. And Dr. Mitchell-Moore, I think I'll start with you. Professor Mitchell-Moore, I think I'll start with you. I think we could spend the whole 2 hours here going over the research that proves the expanded CTC doesn't discourage work and the effects on poverty and hunger and parental stress, or even children's visits to the emergency room. But there are people, as we've heard, and who are citing studies that suggest that it will discourage people from working. I do want to say, Dr. Corinth, and I'm happy to get you into this too, that I did not rely on that 2019 study when Sherrod Brown and I wrote this bill in 2017. That was 2 years before. So if there were other people relying on it, it wasn't me. And it certainly didn't inform my opinion about whether this was a good policy or not. But I think, just based on the conversations I have with moms, mostly in Colorado, that some of these critics are living in an imaginary world, you know, in a world where a mom who's making $2,000 a month as a janitor, you know, who already can't afford the $1,300 a month for a two-bedroom apartment and $900 a month for childcare, you know, in this imaginary world, she quits her job paying $2,000 a month because she starts receiving $250 a month from the child tax credit. In reality, parents can't afford to work because it's too expensive to pay for child care in America. That's not, I don't think, just my opinion. I hear it every single day in Colorado. So I wonder, Dr. Mitchell-Moore, if you could help clear this up. Is there any evidence about the effect of the expanded child tax credit on work? And could you explain how it actually, in some cases, helps families work more?
Thank you for the question. The vast majority of the evidence we have to date suggests that, or found no evidence that the monthly payments reduce parents' employment. And so while we can't say for sure whether these effects would persist, it's not clear that parents knew that the credits were going to expire. I think many of us did not know the credits would expire until late in the year. And lots of survey evidence does show, as you mentioned, that it actually helped parents work more by allowing them to afford childcare and transportation. A survey by AEI actually found that the vast majority of parents said that the credit wouldn't impact their employment at all. And equal shares said it helped them work more as those that said it would help them work less.
Dr. Corinth, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I would just add that there's a large literature in the economic literature finding that tax credits that incentivize work do, in fact, increase work. And I don't think we can rely on the temporary 2021 experience.
Yeah. And I appreciated your testimony about that, too, because it was different than other testimony that we've heard in front of this committee where people actually imagined, I'm sitting in your seat, that there were families out in America watching the committee debate over the expanded child tax credit and retreating from the labor market as a result of that debate. I think your testimony is different from that, which is that the tax credit, it was too short a period, and maybe in 2021, and maybe there was too much else in the environment to be able to tell. I think there's pretty convincing evidence on the other side, but I do want to say that testimony is different from what we've had before, and I'll come back to you if you want to respond to any of that. I do have one other question I'd like to ask at the outset, and since for once I've got the chairman's gavel, I'm going to do that even though I may go over time slightly, Senator. You know, the part of the expanded child tax credit that Sherrod Brown and I worked on that's raised the most debate is what we call full refundability, which simply means that families get the credit even if their income taxes are less than the credit. And Mr. Dedagupta, this question is going to go for you. We know, first of all, if you look up here, that more than 70% of the people that received the fully refundable credit were working. I think that's a really important point. 7 out of 10 were working. If you look at people that were working the year before, that number is actually more than 80% of the people that were getting the refundable tax credit were working. And if you look at the rest of the people that are there, there's 95% that are either working, so the vast majority working, If you want to take just the year of the credit, more than 70%. If you want to take the year before, there were people working and who may have fallen out of the workforce, which is not unusual. I mean, people do that all the time. That's more than 80%. And then you add up people with a child under the age of 2, as Senator Thune said when he was here, maybe there's the opportunity for us to think about people with very young children and whether we'd be happier incentivizing them to work or happier incentivizing them to try to raise children. There are people living with children, living with senior citizens, and their children living with disabled people. If you operate all of that, grandparents, people who have a baby, people who are disabled, that's 90% of the families that benefited from the fully refundable credit. I would argue that that 95%, you can't make a case that they're being disincentivized from working because they're either working or because they've got a really good excuse for not working. And nevertheless, we took this credit away from people that were working. And in doing that, and I'm going to put this in the record later when I have the chance to do it, over 700,000 janitors and housekeepers who do backbreaking work now have lost the benefit of the full refundability of the credit, the marginal improvement to their income that they were getting as a result of the credit. Over 700,000 cooks, waitresses, farmers, and ranchers who feed this country. Almost 600,000 teachers and child care workers who educate and care for their kids. They got the benefit of full refundability. Today they don't have the benefit, and it's not because they're not working. Over 500,000 health care aides and nurses who take care of America's sick and elderly. Over 400,000 construction workers who are building this country. And this is a list from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities that I'm going to enter into the record. And as I said, we've also taken away from grandparents who worked for 50 years and now probably for circumstances beyond their own control are helping to raise their grandchildren, the mom of 1-year-olds who are paying more for child care than they will ever make, you know, if they are working. But notwithstanding all of that, and I think there are probably people on the other side of the aisle who would say that sounds unjust and counterproductive. Notwithstanding all of that, somebody who makes $400,000 in America gets the full $2,000 credit for every kid they have. Talk about something that's misallocated or mistargeted or misspent. So Dr. Dutta-Gupta, could you talk more about who's lost out from the expiration of the enhanced child tax credit? Could you explain, you know, why it makes sense that we live in a world where someone making $400,000 gets the full credit for every child that they have, and that people who are struggling to survive, the vast majority of whom are working, don't get the full credit?
Well, I'm not going to make sense of that world, but I will say that you're exactly right. By making that tax credit fully refundable for 1 year, we kept nearly 3 million families out of poverty. This particularly helped a lot of families of color, Black, Latino. We're talking about nearly half of Black children and 2 in 5 Latino children who did not get the full child tax credit prior to the temporary ARPA expansions because their family incomes were too low to qualify. You're not showing exactly why sometimes people aren't working, but if you don't have a fully refundable child tax credit, you have a situation where somebody gets hit, say, with a cancer diagnosis and then has to focus on their treatment, step away from work. We already don't have paid family medical leave in this country. We fall short on caregiving in general, and now we're going to say we're also going to take away your child tax credit or shrink it. Folks lose jobs all the time through no fault of their own. We've recognized that in the past, and it happens throughout the business cycle. Again, people might be students doing something to advance their prospects in the labor market while they have kids. And it makes little sense when, as Dr. Mitchell-Moore documented, it's actually those folks who are growing up in families with the lowest incomes where you're going to get the most bang for your buck.
Thank you. Senator Johnson, thank you for enduring that, and the floor is yours.
I got no choice.